Hello, everybody. Those that have joined, welcome to our webinar. We're just going to wait a few minutes for other people to join. Give it another few seconds. Okay, I think we can start. It's 1 o'clock, and in the interest of time, I think we shall plow ahead. We have still people joining, but I'm just keen to get started because we've quite a lot to get through in the next hour. Just for information, this webinar is being recorded and it will be available to participants after today. Welcome to our webinar today. This webinar aims to help you to kickstart or even develop further a strategy for managing the food waste in your business and potentially create extra revenue streams for your business. The Food Division of Enterprise Ireland, together with our sustainability, research and development and digitalization colleagues, are here to support you on your journey. So over the next hour, we'll hear from companies who will share experience and learning from their food waste projects. Nicholas from O'Brien Fine Foods and Jenny Mead from Mead Farm. We'll also hear from the Clean Technology Centre in MTU in Cork and the Irish Manufacturing Research Centre, who are working hand in hand with companies on their projects. We've factored in time for Q&A at the end after the presentations, so please do not hesitate to put questions in the chat and we will try our best to respond to them or direct them to the panelists. My colleague Ankush will close the webinar with an overview of relevant Enterprise Ireland supports. As usual, we encourage you to reach out to your Enterprise Ireland client advisor to discuss any projects you may be wishing to work on. I would like to give a shout out to the EPA and its Food Waste Charter Working Group for their support with this webinar. And without further ado, please let me introduce Colm Gibson, Manager for the Clean Technology Centre in MTU in Cork, who will be followed by Nicholas from O'Brien Fine Foods, and they will talk to measurement, to data, where it all begins, and most importantly, to impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hopefully now somebody else is sharing. Oh yeah, there we go. Good afternoon. So my name is Colm Gibson. As Sinead mentioned, I work with the EPA on their Food Waste Charter, which is a voluntary, hopefully the screen has come up there, which is a voluntary, our national voluntary response to food waste and our SDG targets. So we've been working on food waste with the EPA and the Food Waste Charter for the last number of years, primarily trying to develop tools to facilitate, as Sinead said, the beginnings of a journey. Consistent measurement of food waste is kind of is tricky enough depending on the type of business, and every business is different. So even though we do have a series of guides for various different sectors, which I'll mention later on, every journey is different, and I think that's really important to mention, and why the supports that Enterprise Ireland have can be used to facilitate that journey. So why tackle food waste? 10 years ago, if we were talking about this, it wasn't really a hot topic. It is now because of the awareness of the impacts. It's a huge supply chain that goes into it, and if it's wasted, particularly at the end of the process, there's a huge environmental impact and footprint associated with it. And, it's very hard to get numbers, but it's estimated that in around 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions are associated with food waste throughout the chain. And we developed this image on the right-hand side just to try and encapsulate everything that it contributes to, because yes, it is environmental, it is financial, which I'll mention, but it is also social, because there is a huge disparity between, the fact, well, there's a huge issue with the fact that we're producing so much food waste. Yes, there's 10% of the global population that are malnourished. So I just wanted to flag this really seminal piece of work called Project Drawdown. Some of you are probably well aware of it, but it's looked at all the various different actions that we can take in our day-to-day existence, some of them big, some of them small, in terms of climate action and things that we can do. And this is a ranking of it. There are about 100 different things that you can do. And if you look at it here, reducing food waste is the third one down. So it's one of the most important climate actions that we can take. If you also look at the top 10, you've got another 3 that are associated with the production of food. And interestingly, if you look at the first one, it's refrigeration management. And as we know, refrigeration is a huge aspect of our global supply, our global food supply chain. So actually 5 of the top 10 are related to our food system. So it is a hugely important aspect of the work we do. We've obviously signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals, and in 2015, when it was introduced, there was a halving per capita global food waste target put in. Interestingly, the new waste framework, or the updated waste framework directive, just recently brought into power, has binding targets, so that in the production, processing and production sector, which is where the majority here will work, there's a 10% binding target that we have to reduce. So it's becoming a reality that we're going to have to do this. And of course, contingent on any reduction, you have to have a baseline and good measurement. There's also the business imperative. And a number of years ago, RAP and WRI looked at the impact of prevention. And it's a really, really hard number to put on, but it's a 14-to-1 return on investment is what they found. So for every euro spent on prevention, there's a 14 euro return on your investment. That's really, really good. So really good business case. Yet food waste is hard. And I often ask, what's the difference between these two pictures? And the one on the left is just, it's replacing an electronic piece of kit. And the return on investment is quite obvious there. You know how much, energy you're using, you replace it, you upgrade, and it's a very simple sum. Reducing food waste is much more difficult. And I know Nick is going to come after me and speak on this, because it's a continual challenge. You replace a piece of kit, it's kind of done. Managing food waste is an ongoing thing, especially in production processes that have variability in it. So where are we with regard to food waste in Ireland? In around 800,000 tonnes is what we're generating, with about 300,000 of that coming from manufacturing processing. A lot of that may be unavoidable. So, in the meat industry, you're obviously going to have a lot of it, but a lot of it is preventable or manageable in different ways. So if we think about that, we're going to have to reduce that by 10,000 tonnes before the end of the decade, which is 30,000 tonnes. So that's a challenge for every business. And I think that what's really important about this is it's a collective response that we have to consider. And that's what the National Food Waste Prevention Programme is doing. The EPA support this, and it's really to implement Ireland's national food waste prevention roadmap, which is up for renewal now. So we have got to the point where 2025 is coming to an end. So we have 5 years with these new binding targets where we're going to have to address food waste throughout the supply chain. In terms of the Circular Economy Programme, which is run by the EPA and addresses food waste, there's 3 aspects to it. There's the supply chain and hospitality, which is the charter work. There's the household side, which is the Stop Food Waste Programme. And then a lot of work goes into researching in terms of the evidence and the insights, because we do need information, and we need quantifiable and verifiable information in order to precipitate prevention, because a lot of people can have a gut feeling about it. It helps when we have good data. So with regard to the charter, what is it? It's a voluntary response by businesses across Ireland and across the supply chain. There's 4 elements to it. There's the pledge, which is about getting involved. And pledging is really important because it's been found that businesses and people who make a commitment are far more likely to follow through on it. And a lot of the things when it comes to food waste that are involved in the reduction or the prevention involve people and involve change. Not always throughout, but certainly at the start. And again, Nick will talk to that. The next part is to measure, and to measure in a consistent fashion. And we'll come back to that. And then ultimately we want to reduce and report. Now, the reporting with regard to the charter is a voluntary part of it. The data won't be used for national reporting, but it's more about the fact that businesses are committing to this reporting and setting out a number, setting a waste reduction target, and doing their best to address it. And it is a challenge, and that's why Enterprise Ireland are supporting food waste reduction through their supports. So what about the measurement protocol? It's it's really about using the data that you currently have to measure then in a consistent manner. This is what it's all about, using what we have at the start to measure. Um, when you start measuring food waste, you're going to identify gaps. And actually, for the first couple of years, you might find that your food waste numbers go up as you improve your data. And that's fine. That's fantastic. But it's about measuring in a consistent fashion. So we've tried to set out, with a lot of help actually from the state agencies and their clients, a methodology that supports this. Uh, Ultimately, that food waste number, will be used to set targets, and measurable targets, hopefully. That will support with whatever reporting that you may do, either internally or nationally. It'll help map out actions, and ultimately it'll help reduce our emissions. And we do also have emissions targets. Obviously, Scope 1 and Scope 2 are the primary ones that people have been looking at to date, but Scope 3 emissions, when we start looking at them, can be really, really significant, especially when it comes to food. So the measurement protocol is very closely linked with the food use hierarchy. So this hierarchy is all about where we want our food flows to go, with disposal at the very, very bottom and prevention at the top. And the prevention is, of course, throughout the supply chain. And when we look at the protocol, we link everything back to the food-related flows that are coming out of a process that are not your products. So even though people will say, look, I have co-products or secondary products that are going off-site for other uses, we still want businesses to interrogate those, because interrogating those numbers, even though you may have a current management route which is up closer to the top of the hierarchy, that's where the opportunities may arise for valorization, for improving your bottom line. And there's great opportunities there, especially when we know that there's 300,000 tons of food waste potentially available for valorization or prevention. So it is important to not just focus on the waste side of things, to look at all flows. The other thing that's important is that terminology around this it can be challenging, because different people call offcuts, side streams, co-products, byproducts, which obviously has a legislative implication, production residues. There's a lot of different vernacular around it. And I don't ever want to get caught up on that, because I think it's just important to measure the flows and just focus on those. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. Obviously, I mentioned the legislative impacts with regard to Cat 1 and Cat 3. And then the thing about it is that it was interesting. We were working with Teagasc recently as part of this work, and they noted that, 5-10 years ago, a lot of people were coming with new product sort of suggestions and experiments they wanted to do with them. Now it's about 80% or 85% looking at valorization options of co-products or byproducts, because they are materials that businesses already have. And the supply chain, of course, is a challenge, especially in times of global upheaval. So what does the protocol do? This is a kind of an overview. I'm going to just briefly go through it. We do have a guide which explains this in more detail. So the first thing is to download the workbook. It is an Excel spreadsheet, but we've tried to make it look not like an Excel spreadsheet, but it is still an Excel spreadsheet. We use that then on step 2 to look at the potential food wastes and the food waste flows, and link them in then to the food use hierarchy. After that, we try and gather data to assign to your various different food flows. As part of the protocol workbook, we develop a report which you can then use to report. But crucially, we want businesses then to take action and to keep it going, because if you remember back at the start, it is a continual process. And why we want people to measure is that if you're measuring consistently, then you're continually checking. And I think that that's hugely important, because it's not we've replaced a machine. It is a continual process of measurement and review and improvement. So what is the spreadsheet? It looks like this. There's a number of tabs down at the bottom. The green ones there are just examples. And then we have 3 parts. We have the food flow sheet, which I'll show you, the protocol data sheet, which is where you put in your information, and then it generates your summary report. The protocol flow sheet goes through the various different types of process-related food flows that you may have coming off your process. And we try to break them down according to surplus, secondary co-product materials, food waste. Again, this is depending on definitions, liquid wastes. And liquid waste we put in there, even though it's hard to, consider them at the moment, it is something that is going to be considered. And general waste, because we know that about 15% of the general waste going off sites is food related. So by interrogating food flows throughout your process using this, it is really interesting what we find. And we've done this recently with a number of IBEC clients, and it was so interesting to discuss with them because they gave us numbers, and then we actually start interrogating them. And if you have 1% or 2% waste, it doesn't seem like a lot, but if it's daily and weekly and annually, then it does accrue, even though it doesn't seem like a lot on a day-to-day basis. The next part is the workbook. And this is broken into kind of three different parts. The first one is about your site, basic information. The second one then is trying to put numbers against the food flows that we discussed in the food flow worksheet. And it's really, it's fine that if you don't know what it is, because your data will improve over time. So this really is about making a start and interrogating the data as you go. And again, Nick is going to talk about, that because, and sorry, we want businesses to be open about the challenges of measuring, because it is a challenge, especially if you have a lot of stuff going into one container or one receptacle or one skip. It is a challenge, but challenges need to be overcome, and there's value in that. Again, there's another part of this data sheet which is about setting targets. We want businesses to set targets, and if your targets are not met, that's absolutely fine. It's about setting them, making sure they're realistic, that they're based on a decent baseline. And finally, and this is where I'm going to hand over to Nick, we use this to generate one number. Okay, even though there's multiple numbers that go into it, we have one number here. And then this is just an example. There was 12 tons of food waste coming out of this business, in the reporting year 2022. That's what we're trying to get businesses to start with, to get an accurate number that reflects all of the different flows. And it's absolutely fine if you don't feel confident in it. But that one starting point, that one number is where we want businesses to get to and then build on that. So I'm going to hand over to Nick now because he's going to tell his story about that one number. Hopefully I've stopped sharing. Have I stopped sharing?
You have. Thanks, Colm.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you see my screen there now? Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Colm. Yeah, so my name is Nick Reynolds. I am head of ESG at O'Brien Fine Foods. And firstly, thanks for a very, very informative session, as always, Colm. We've had a lot of interaction over the years, and it's just commendable the amount of work that you guys have done, as well as through the Food Waste Charter in supporting such a big challenge that we have, not just globally, but here in Ireland, and the numbers show that. So I think we all have our own responsibilities as food and drink companies to set this as a very high metric or key metric that we all need to measure. So just very quickly, there we go. My slides are moving on. For those of you that don't know O'Brien Fine Foods, so we specialize in prepared and packaged cooked meats. So you'll know us more from our brands, Brady Family, which is pork, and then Green Farm, which is chicken and turkey, which we produce at 2 separate sites here in ROI. We also produce own label products for most of the big retailers across Ireland, the Tesco's, Lidl's, Musgraves, as well as Dunn's. So just before I go into following on from what Colm was saying around our food waste targets and how we've gone about gathering our data, just around how sustainability fits into our wider business agenda. So for us, sustainability is crucial and a central part of our business strategy. It starts all the way from the farm all the way to our consumers' homes. So it covers our entire supply chain. And we really look at it under those 3 pillars there of better sourced, how are we working with our suppliers to make a more responsible supply chain? How are we then better made? How are we operating as most efficiently and effectively as we can, but putting people at the center of that to help them develop and help us come up with the ideas in how we can be more effective and efficient in how we operate. And then better for you, looking more downstream, is how are we creating more sustainable and healthier products for our consumers? How are we being more open and transparent in the impact that we're having? So that's all around reporting and measurement. And how are we integrating into the communities that we really operate in? So as you can see here, it really encompasses all of ESG, sustainability. We've tested ourselves against some of the best practice standards out there. We're a B Corp certified company. We're an Origin Green member, and we've aligned to the SDGs. So as a business, we believe that if we can meet all the various commitments that we have here, we'll be able to achieve our overall goal of bringing better quality food to everyone every day. Food waste is central to this sustainability strategy. It's one of our key metrics, and we set it back in 2021. We said to ourselves, we need to put a lot more focus on, and we need to commit right now to reducing our food waste by 50% by 2030. We had no idea how we were going to do that, and that's really where our conversation with Colm began. 4 years ago when I started at O'Brien's, and using the EPA food waste charter that he would have taken you through there. When we initially went through it, we didn't have a hell of a lot of information. We had invoices at that stage from our contractors, and to be honest, it brought about a lot more questions than answers around how much food waste do we actually have, where is it going, what are the various different waste streams that are making that up, what's the value, the potential value of all those waste streams, how do we or can we track these waste streams going down line, and where are our gaps. And it painted a very fragmented picture at the beginning, and I'm not going to lie. And very quickly, it became apparent that this involved all departments. It wasn't just the guys within operations, but decisions we made in our procurement team would have an impact down the line in our slicing yields. So it really became an all business target that we work towards. So we set out and really focusing on data. Data for us was key at this stage. So we said, okay, we're going to assess what are our food waste streams that we can identify throughout the operations. We're going to break that bigger target up into site-specific targets, into operational targets at various stages of operations. And we're going to start to measure this on a more consistent basis. And we're going to give it time and effort in analyzing it and try to understand it a little bit better and get the right information to the right people in order for them to make better decisions around how we can go and potentially tackle this. And it didn't work at the beginning. We got a lot more information coming our way. We didn't really, I think we had obviously that culture at that stage where it wasn't as important as it should have been. And you'll see by our results there, initially our food waste went up. But slowly and surely, we found out what our key focus areas were, and through that process of consistently analyzing that information and bringing it to the right people, we slowly started to find different initiatives and projects that would be able to support us in reducing that. And then the last point there is we're always going to have unavoidable waste. Colm spoke about the waste hierarchy there, and we look at that as well. How can we ensure that unavoidable waste, one, we're limiting it as much as we possibly can, but then we're working our way up the food hierarchy. So at this point in time, a lot of our waste would be going to rendered down into animal feed, as well as then into biodiesel generation. So that's somewhere that we continuously look on and try to improve. Just a bit of a breakdown of our numbers over the years. So as I said earlier, we started earlier on 2021, so that's our baseline year. When we look at food waste, operational food waste, we look at tons of food waste per tons sold, product sold. So it gives us an intensity figure. And there you can see initially, we obviously started getting better quality data. We were starting to fix the culture a little bit. Our food waste did go up. It went up by like 5% that year over the 2 sites. But then slowly and surely, we started to make really good inroads, and we're sitting on 32% there year to date at this point in time compared to 2021. And there are a whole range of different initiatives that supported this. Everything from operational efficiency projects through our PMO process. So looking at our blade maintenance, looking at temperature controls. Could we lower the temperature to support not just quality, but being able to achieve better slicing yields and getting more of that product into the pack. New product development. So we're working with our retailers to come up with, okay, we've had this side cut, doesn't meet the initial spec to get into the pack, but we could be making this trim product that could serve a different purpose with our branded and own label brand. And that significantly help us reduce our waste. And then in partnerships with our suppliers, they're producing our raw material in a different format because they're more skilled to be able to do that than us. That would support us be able to reduce our food waste down the line, as well as then partnerships such as Food Cloud for surplus material, as well as developing our own employee shop. We call it the corner shop, where we give back to our employees at really reduced rates. But for me, the biggest point was right at the bottom, and I think it's how do you keep the data analysis going? How do you keep on top of it? How do you ensure that all the projects that you've put in place are continuously kept in place, and you don't fall back to your old ways of working? So for us, it's always going to be around data analysis. It's going to be about keeping ownership in each of those various areas and continuously improve that. And we can still do a lot more in how we can improve the data that we have. So just last slide from me, a couple key learnings. Measure, measure, measure. You've got to start somewhere and you're going to improve that. You're never going to get it 100% perfect day one, and keep reviewing. Remember, all departments are responsible for this in one way or another. Once you get better data, you'll be able to get better information to the various people within the department. And the last thing is, just because it's a waste to you doesn't mean it's a waste to someone else. So put value on your waste, and very quickly you'll start to see different opportunities. I have included my email there, so if anyone does have any questions or would like to reach out, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very
Colm.
much, Nick and Colm, for that really interesting expose. Really appreciate that. Jenny Mead of Mead Farm Group unfortunately could not be with us today, but she's kindly recorded a short video for us with some top tips for companies embarking on projects involving food waste. So a few minutes with Jenny Mead now.
Thank you for that introduction. So I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of what we have done at Mead Farm to try to totally manage our food and prevent food waste. Just to give you a background of what we do, we are a grower of conventional and organic potatoes, carrots, onions, and brassicas. We pack the full range of fresh produce for retailers nationwide, and we are a distributor and service provider in fresh produce. We're a family agribusiness. Philip Mead Sr. there started as a sole trader in 1977 and founded Mead Potato Company in 1982. We've since become Mead Farm in 2020 to better reflect what we do. But from the very beginning, he did not like to see good food go to waste, and that's part of our DNA. It really informs everything that we do, and that's just, I suppose, the first top tip is just to have that mindset of just really disliking food waste. So, and that's a good dislike to have, because 33% of crops in general are wasted along the supply chain, and that waste can happen in different places. It can happen in the field, crop loss when the harvester goes through, pre-farm, grading, pre-storage, storage, in the pack house, out of spec food, and on the retail shelf. So for us, the important thing is to prevent it all along the supply chain, starting at source. So soil health is a huge thing for us, and the more that we invest in our soil and its microbial biodiversity, then the easier it is to harvest, the more drought resistant it is, and the more flood resistant it is, so therefore there's less waste in the field. Plant health, we also have to monitor the plants very closely throughout the whole growing process. Our quality team would work very closely with our farm managers and with agronomists to make sure that what's coming into the pack house is not going to be wasted in any way or out of spec. And so I suppose this is just to say, top tip would be to look at food systems, go back to the very source of wherever your raw material is coming from, and see if there's any tweaks that could be made to prevent waste later on in the supply chain. For us, one of the great things about FoodCloud, they came and asked us if we wanted to pilot a gleaning program for them back in 2017. And so FoodCloud corporate volunteers now recover lost produce in fields throughout the growing season, the harvesting season. And in 2024, they would have recovered 7,000 kilograms of veg from our fields. That was 121 volunteers putting in lots of volunteer hours in 2024, and it meant that FoodCloud clients and community groups all were able to enjoy great fresh produce straight from the field. So it's a super program. FoodCloud is an excellent organization. All growers are welcome to join, so if you know of anybody, spread the word. Another little add-on this past year was that the World Wildlife Fund has an in-field crop loss tool, and the FoodCloud volunteers kindly offered to test that out for us. So that just also points out the need to measure what kind of waste you have in order to improve. So that's looking at what crops are actually left in the ground and seeing how we can prevent that in future. So I suppose the top tip here would be look for collaborators in the supply chain, and you couldn't look any for a better collaborator than Food Cloud. They're excellent at preventing food waste. Great organization. So, in the pack house, then we had our grade 1 produce was going to retailers. Anything that had a little blemish or that was perfectly healthy and safe food was possibly going to prepared foods. You'd peel away the skin and it would be a perfectly peeled potato. Some was donated, some of our surplus was donated to Food Cloud. We would send our trucks up to Dublin and they would have a stop at Food Cloud. A lot of surplus potatoes were going to stock feed, and then fruit and veg, some were going to processors on an ad hoc basis for juicing or for soup. And then we had a little bit of gray starch extraction from our prepared foods, and that was not food grade though, so it wasn't really being valorized effectively. So we introduced an innovation engineering program to the company, and that was brilliant because it taught you how to fail fast and fail cheap, to look at innovative ideas and try them out on a small scale and see if they are viable or not. It taught us how to get stimuli from lots of different people and groups and cross-fertilize different areas of your thinking in order to come up with new products. So it is definitely very worthwhile for introducing an NPD program with innovation engineering. That combined with just the normal lean manufacturing, and we started looking at our potato surplus as being probably the weightiest of all of our surplus, and we tried some dehydration, we tried extrusion, but we ended up settling on potato starch extraction because it had been in our minds for a while because we had sold potatoes to Northern European starch makers before. So we decided that, seeing as there was no indigenously produced food grade potato starch available on the market in Ireland or the UK, that would be how we would pursue our surplus potatoes. So it's a great product, potato starch. It is a gluten-free product, which is perfect for a lot more people are gluten-free now. It is a thickener for sauces, soups, and stews. It's also a binding agent. It gives a light crispy coating when frying. If you think like Korean fried chicken, lots of that kind of very light frying is done with potato starch, and it's great for gluten-free baking. So it's a super product. Foodies love it. It won a gold award at the IQFA, won Food Service Product of the Year. The manufacturers, food producers, food service people really like it, and on top of all that, it appeals to eco-conscious consumers because you're starting with a byproduct that's making good use out of surplus. So now, obviously, we have solved the problem of all the surplus potatoes. We're working on a new retail pack just to bring that out to direct to consumers. And the EU Commission came to visit the EIP Agri Group and found it to be a great example of best practice in food crop management. So it's been a really worthwhile exercise for us. So looking at other things that we've done, we still have the fruit and veg surplus, and anything that is not suitable for Food Cloud would go for stock feed. There's also the avenue of anaerobic digestion, which I'm sure a lot of you are being approached now as these ADs are popping up more. And then we also still would sell to processors for soup and juicing, which is a great result for any surplus. But then additionally, in the pack house, last year, Foodiverse approached us about piloting, Food Cloud approached us about piloting their Foodiverse program, which is where it's an app and we have food heroes on the pack house floor that go around, and if there's any surplus food or out of spec, they load it onto the app, and we have Food Cloud clients, different community groups, come and pick direct up from us every day. So that's been brilliant in terms of getting, say, soft fruit and berries that would have not survived the supply chain of getting shipped to Food Cloud, getting sorted, and then shipped out again. So now the Food Cloud community groups come straight to us, and that's been absolutely brilliant and has saved a good bit. And then there's also new products on the horizon. So I won't go into any detail, but we have UCC does we had a food innovation graduate working on a carrot valorization project. Sean Gallagher did a great job with the feasibility study here in First Class Honors. That was a great collaboration. We might be working on this shortly. Further, TU Dublin, we have a long-term relationship with them, and we have funded for a graduate researcher to work on a smart food packaging made from food waste. And then we also have worked with a UK packaging manufacturer who's very innovative and interesting, and he has worked with our potato pomate, the byproduct from our potato starch, in making fireproof doors and making pulp punnets. It did work. It's just we don't really have the it's not viable at the moment with the amount of pomate that we have. But I suppose this is all just to say, collaborate. You know, reach out to different people, test and try, and don't be afraid to fail. There's great resources. All these organizations here are brilliant, and they have supported us or funded us and been absolutely brilliant. And that book there, Connor Spacey, Wasted, I put that there just because that's another great source of inspiration. Connor Spacey's the No Waste Chef, and he has found different things to do with parts of vegetables and fruit that you didn't know you could do anything with. So inspiration can come from lots of different places. That's one place to look. And benefits of this have been, you know, first and foremost, it helps reduce emissions, prevent climate change. It helps you meet your customer responsibilities, and it gives you sustainability certifications and helps you meet your targets for Origin Green if you're enrolled in that. It gives you diversification with a unique, useful, and branded product, in our case, our potato starch, and it causes import substitution, food security, and supply chain resilience. And then you can have by looking at different ways to do this, innovation engineering and continuous improvement have really enhanced our organization. So thank you guys for listening, and hope some of this might have been helpful. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed that. Another inspiring story of valorization of food waste from Jenny Mead. I would now like to introduce you to Geraldine Brennan, Head of Circular Economy at the IMR, who will talk about the market size for food waste derivatives and share some collaborative projects that they have been working on with companies. Thank you, Geraldine.
Thank you very much. Great to be here this afternoon. Just before I dive into some highlights from the work that we've been doing with the food sector, amongst others, around looking at ways to innovate and valorize waste, I just want to take a moment to introduce IMR, who are an Enterprise Ireland and IDA Ireland supported technology sector. And our raison d'etre is it really chimes with what Jenny Mead said there around innovation engineering. Ultimately, what we do is support Irish industry to demystify, de-risk, and deliver emerging technologies, processes, but also concepts like food valorization and circularity. We work across 4 key areas, namely digitalization. We heard from Colm earlier how important data is and how important it is for us to utilize measurement and leverage digital infrastructure in order to improve our continuous improvement in measurement through data management and collection. We also have expertise in advanced automation and robotics and control, which can aid prevention of waste, reducing scrap and production residues. We have expertise in design for manufacturing, so looking at how perhaps the way production is being laid out in a factory might contribute to, when you're doing batch productions, certain wastage. And then the area that I lead in the context of sustainability and circular economy. In terms of our portfolio of projects, the one where we've done the most work with regards to food and drinks is in the context of Circulera. That's the large diagram in the middle. You'll see there the cluster in the top left-hand side, where one of the founding signatories of the Food Waste Charter, Arista, are the bakery champion. And actually, through the work that IMR has done with them as a founding member of Circulera, that positioned them to engage with the protocol that that Colm highlighted. One of those things that we also do is highlight that it's really important to just start. And as Nick said, to ensure that you're actually understanding where waste is occurring, and that you're continually looking to seek improvements over time. Another area where we've worked in the context of food innovation is around Symbiobia, which was an EPA Green Enterprise funded project. And this was looking at the opportunity between sectors. So what we heard from Jenny Mead around the fact that they've done a huge amount within their supply chain, looking at the residuals and looking how to create new products. Symbiobia is a really good example of an initiative where the production residual or side stream of one company can actually be a material substitute for another. I also want to just call to attention BioDirect 2.0, which is an Intertrade Ireland supported project, which is led by Munster Technological University, which IMR is part of. And that is looking at opportunities between sectors at an all-island level. It's just kicking off. So again, for those of you who are kind of looking to continually, I suppose, expand your horizons in the space, I encourage you to take a look. Doing a bit of a deep dive, excuse me, into Circulera. It is Ireland's first industry-led public-private partnership, and it is founded in collaboration with the Department of Climate, Energy and the Environment, the Environmental Protection Agency, and ClimateKick. And one of the big things about it being cross-sectoral is, again, connected to this idea of innovation through collaboration, is that circular economy opportunities exist not only within a business's footprint, but also within the supply chains that you work in and your own sector. But at a material level, when we're talking about it from the context of the food sector, it's important to recognize that huge opportunities exist, not only for new product development, like the example that Jenny Mead highlighted, but also between companies. And that's what I'm going to dive into a bit when I talk about the Symbiobia project. But again, in terms of the context of the work we do a lot around awareness raising since it being established in 2020, knowledge sharing. I'm going to highlight some references, some resources that might be of value to you after today's webinar. We've also built various capacity building tools, and we have a dedicated innovation fund and venture accelerator. But collaboration is fundamental, because best practices in one food company in a different part of the food sector could be something that you could do. And again, we facilitate site visits between organizations and that knowledge sharing. We have established Ireland's first dedicated accelerator for circular ventures. And here is a selection of the 34 ventures that we've supported over the last 6 years, all of which who've identified opportunities to create new products, ingredients from valorizing bio-based materials, some of which are food, across dairy, marine, distillery, into a range of products like the medtech, packaging, and fast-moving consumer goods. I don't have an opportunity to tell all of their stories today, but I think it's important just to highlight that there are huge opportunities. And this concurs with what Colm was saying at the start of today with his engagement with Teagasc around the fact that there is huge, huge value in looking at your production residuals and your waste and understanding the value that resides in them. It's a whole untapped, or we're starting to tap into it, evident by these ventures, but there's huge, huge opportunities. In terms of some of the work that Circulera has done over the last number of years, I just wanted to call to your attention some resources, two of which particularly relevant in the context of food production and processing around circular bioeconomy and industrial symbiosis. But as you can see, there's a whole range of them. Another one worth just flagging, and it's the end of waste and byproducts. Colm flagged these at the start of today's webinar, but it's really important to recognize that for most food companies who are engaging with the likes of DAFM, Enterprise Ireland, when you're looking to valorize new byproducts, there is an onus on you to engage with the EPA to essentially provide a byproduct notification. And I'm just flagging this because, again, when we start to look at waste in the context of, production residuals from a legal perspective, a regulatory perspective in the Waste Framework Directive, but equally waste, when we start to try and transform these, there might be new regulatory obligations. So I'm just drawing to attention, it's something that the EPA are very happy to engage with you on. It's just something to be aware of because it's a new way of working with materials. So there are regulatory obligations there. in the context of, again, some work that we did a number of years ago, just looking at good practices in the context of putting in place waste prevention and valorization in the context of the food and drink sector. Some quick examples here around, and we've heard of it already in terms of opportunities to switch perhaps in your fleet to the likes of using cooking oils as alternatives, looking at the packaging around your food as much as the food processing itself, looking to see if you can essentially reduce single-use packaging, looking into see if you can put in place reusable, refillable packaging, and then equally looking at the role of data. We've heard a lot about Food Cloud, who are working with most of the manufacturers on the island looking to reduce surplus. But in addition, Winner are an interesting international example of looking at how to use AI to process some of that data in order to understand how much is actually ending up in the bin. So again, I don't have an opportunity to go deep in there, but I just wanted to flag it as an example that may be relevant to some of you. Diving into some BioBio, which is the EPA research project that I flagged, I just wanted to highlight again this point about the fact that the opportunities sometimes exist between businesses. So again, I really concur with what Nick said and Colm around looking and trying to map all of your flows, because there is no doubt someone else who might be able to valorize them if you can't yourself. So the new product development opportunities are wide. To bring that to life, Arista, the example I highlighted at the beginning, who are the bakery champion for the EPA's food waste action charter, has done a lot of work with the Circular Food Co., another Circular member, to look at how to valorize spent grain. Some of the seeds of this, which started back in that EPA project, looking at Penalto Foods and St. Mel's Brewery, where we developed a beer. These actors came into the process in workshops and saw opportunities and carried on thereafter. There's some other outputs. Again, I think the slides will be made available afterwards. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to leave participants today with one point, and it's just in terms of the point that Colm made around jargon. Industrial symbiosis is an idea that there are synergies that exist between companies that are co-located in a relatively small local geographic area. And fundamentally, it's about this idea of looking for opportunities to valorize not only physical materials, but also looking at energy. Perhaps the demand of energy in one company sitting next door to you is offset, and there's something you could do around renewable energy, equally logistics. There's lots of different ways, starting with food waste, to ultimately look to collaborate to achieve synergies which reduce costs and contribute to resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Geraldine. Super interesting. Really appreciate that. We're now going to open it up to the floor. Hopefully we'll have some questions for our panelists. Obviously you can put them in the chat, but happy for anybody on the call now to ask directly any of the panelists any questions you might have relating to projects that you're thinking about, or experiences, or even sharing experiences yourself from your own food waste reduction stories. Before we ask Ankush to outline the supports that Enterprise Ireland provides. So daring somebody to ask a question at this point of the session. We'd love to hear from you, we really would. And as we're waiting for questions, I'm conscious, Colm, I think I may have cut you off, and Nick, in the interest of time, if you've anything that you'd like to add on, I think maybe we'll give you a few minutes.
Thanks, Sinead. I just did want to come in about, what is our ask today? And our ask is for businesses to sign up to the Food Waste Charter. It's voluntary. We need leaders, and we've heard from Nick, we've heard from Jenny, and there are plenty others who have fantastic stories to tell. So signing up to the Charter is a really important action that we can take individually and then collectively. And that's what Geraldine has been talking about, this collective action around a topic that's obviously hugely important. I did my best to get, I hope I got every member on from the Charter website, and you can see there's almost 100 now that have signed up to this, and it's amazing to see this because it's voluntary, but it does obviously link into some of the work that is more mandatory, Origin Green and B Corp and all this. It supports it, and Ankush is going to talk about the supports that are available. But what I think is really interesting, and this is from the EPA's 2023 report, when there weren't as many, and there's been a huge increase since, the idea as well behind this is that 84% of the members were trying to track their food waste. 64% were actually reporting on it. And there is this disparity. Yes, we can measure, we can try and track it, but the reporting is really important, because I think businesses are nervous. That we were dealing with one earlier in the year, and they said we're not quite ready to publish our numbers. And I understand it, but I didn't think that they should have any fear of sharing their numbers. And a lot of Nick has been unbelievably open about this, and that's what we need. We need businesses to be open. It doesn't have to be all your data, but it's the stories that we want. And in that regard, we have on the resources section of the Charter website guidance on sectors. So we've had great input from BIM on the seafood, we've prepared foods all the way down, and we've meat and dairy, which are imminent. They're just being signed off on. We have a series of new case studies coming out next week. So that's my job to get finalized for this week. And then we also have measurement tools for other sectors, because this is a supply chain issue. We have public sector offices because they're part of the public sector mandate. They have a mandate. We have food service and we have food retail, a really important nexus in this whole consumer side of things. There's also, from the Charter's perspective, we try and support businesses to communicate with both their staff, because staff are really, really important, but also to communicate that, their involvement. So when people sign up, they do get this comms pack, which hopefully will be of use. And I just want to leave with this, we all want to tackle climate and the irreversible changes that are, that are coming day in, day out. And food waste is something that we can do in our personal lives, when we're out and about, and in our working lives, especially in the sectors that you work in. And I encourage you to take a leap, make a start, especially on the measurement. And that's why I think that the supports that EI provide are really, really valuable to help overcome those barriers that sometimes, seem really hard when it's just one person starting this process in a business. Thanks.
Thank you, Colm. We have a couple of questions in from Manuel Lopez. Geraldine, are you able to see those questions, or shall I read them out?
Good for the recording to read them out, but I can see it. Yeah.
So how best to engage with IMR? BioConnect in Monaghan is still not funded and would be very interesting for the food manufacturing companies in the area. And for Colm, would you provide support to trial new methods of food waste conversion like biocomposting on site, etc.? So first of all, Geraldine.
Sure. So Manuel, thanks for the question. Yeah, so really it's a case of reaching out. IMR has got 2 locations, one in Rathcoole, County Dublin, the other in Mullingar. We have a 35,000 square foot R&D facility. So my email address is in the slides. Circulera, you can get at circulera@imr.ie. I am aware of BioConnect. There's a lot of connectivity across the likes of the Circular Bioeconomy Cluster Southwest, hosted by MTU, IMR, who hosts Circulera, BioDirect, which is a combination of actors from both of those, amongst others, Chagas, etc. I think the big thing to do is when I would say to all food companies, if you have questions, ask, because the thing is, if we're not the right person for you to speak to, we will point you to Colm or Sinead or Ankush, or the thing is, we all the ecosystem does know each other well, so we have collaborators across the ecosystem. So really ask the person and ask them to refer you to others if they can't answer your question. But I think it's really important to leverage the insights and the best practices that are being generated, because there's loads of good work happening, evident by the signatories to the Food Waste Charter, and the work that various RPOs and RTOs and academics are doing around the country in this space, given the urgency and the size of the challenge and relevance to climate action.
Colm, would you provide support to new trial methods, food waste conversion like biocomposting?
If I had a big barrel of cash, I'd give you all money, lads. I just don't. But just to echo what Geraldine said, like, we're a small country, we're unbelievably well connected. And I think it's such a valuable point. Talk to the people you know, talk to the people locally, and they'll put you in contact with those that may be most suited. And again, just with regard to biocomposting, composting is a fantastic way of rejuvenating soil and using resources. But when you look at the food use hierarchy, it is that little bit further down. We do want to look at prevention options first. And I would always encourage businesses, if you're looking at those, and they're still very, very valuable parts of the solution, we do need to consider the top of the hierarchy where possible. But then the biocomposting, the generation of biogas, these are all fantastic parts of an integrated solution, because there, as Nick said, there will always be parts of waste. There will always be waste. It's just inevitable. So look, I'd love to support it, but I think I'd be going to Enterprise Ireland first, because they have great supports, and I know that next in the coming weeks there'll be something coming out about how to use the supports in terms of food waste. So Sinead, I might give you the last word on that, or Ankush, sorry.
Yes, thank you very much, Colm, and thank you, Manuel, for those questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Ankush to close this session with, most importantly, the supports that are available from Enterprise Ireland.
Perfect. Yeah, I hope you can see my screen there.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Colm, Geraldine, Jenny, Nick, for sharing insights into strategies that can help businesses reduce food waste in their operations and become more sustainable. Food waste has environmental, social, and economic consequences, as we heard today, and therefore tackling food waste is one of the key steps when combating climate change, supporting Ireland's transition to circular economy. And Enterprise Ireland is committed to working with its client companies as they navigate the journey to low carbon and sustainable future. So Enterprise Ireland offers tailored grants for businesses throughout their growth and sustainability journey, from research and innovation to digitalization and sustainability. Our range of funding and grants enables businesses to grow and become more sustainable, lean, and productive. So in the next few slides, I'll quickly highlight these sustainability, innovation, and digitalization supports that can help your business implement sustainable practices and processes. So the Green Transition Fund supports companies at every step of their decarbonization journey, from initial planning and capacity building to capital investment in decarbonization, research, and innovation. So under the Green Transition Fund, the Climate Action Planning Fund for Business is a mix of consultancy and training supports, helping companies implement sustainable practices and processes. So any businesses seeking guidance on waste management or seeking support to develop initial sustainability or circular economy action plan can use Climate Action Voucher. Or Green Start can be used to establish your food waste baseline, but at the same time, if you're looking to establish your product footprint or organizational carbon footprint, also to carry out a circular gap assessment or life cycle assessment, companies can look at Green Start to get that expert advice there. Companies who are seeking training to build high-level environmental management capabilities can use Green Plus, so external training on implementing high-level environmental management standards, such as the ISO standards for environmental management systems, energy, circular economy, or bioeconomy. Companies can use Green Plus to achieve that training and guidance in developing that high-level capability. So while companies look to track, measure, and manage the waste, the real cost can run far deeper and can consume significant resources and often overlap with energy usage. So under our second stream here in the Green Transition Fund, the Enterprise Emission Reduction Investment Fund, we are helping businesses to access funding to take bigger steps in carbon reduction and sustainable innovation, energy monitoring and tracking, to put systems in place which can help monitor and track your business's energy, water, and gas use. Capital investment supports are also available to support decarbonization of your manufacturing combustion processes under the Capital Investment for Decarb and Energy and Environmental Aid. So businesses can also access a number of research and development supports, from innovation vouchers to large-scale R&D projects supported under sustainability and our existing research grants for exploring developing new and substantially improved products and services that can facilitate waste and emissions reductions. And we saw a fantastic example of new innovation today from Jenny's presentation there. We also have the number of digitalization supports to help companies on their digital transition journey, which can be a key driver of sustainable productivity, waste reduction, and increased efficiency. So company can use these funds to assess their digital readiness or for implementing or introducing new digital technologies and solutions for waste management, tracking and reduction, which can lead to new or improved sustainable production methods, increasing your overall operational efficiency or leading to a greater productivity and competitiveness. And finally, I would like to highlight our capability building training programs initiative by Enterprise Ireland, such as the Sustainability Kickstarter workshop, which is a half-day workshop aimed to bring business leaders together to recognize the significance of sustainability and decarbonization, helping them understanding the principles of sustainability and ESG to interact with peers across the sectors to create an action map. So the dates for those are on our website, and any clients in the house today can register for those upcoming sessions there. We also run the Sustainability Leaders program in collaboration with Skillnet, which provides practical support and guidance to sustainability leads in the company on how to transition to a sustainable business. And lastly, the Sustainable Enterprise webinars from Enterprise Ireland are available in the on-demand section of our website, featuring topics such as how to develop a sustainability strategy and action plan, or how to achieve net zero emissions in line with voluntary standards. But as we heard from Colm, how the food waste can affect your Scope 3 emissions. So if you want to learn more about that, we have a couple of webinars on our on-demand section there. But we also have some upcoming webinars coming up. You can see there on your screen, and you can register for them on our website, and they will be available for registration from today onwards. So as Sinead mentioned, please get in touch with your assigned client advisor to know more about these supports and how Enterprise Ireland can support you in your waste reduction and circular journey. And if you need any more information, you can also reach out to our Green Desk or your relevant agency. So I think that's on the support. But yeah, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all our speakers. We are just right on the time there. So thank you so much, Geraldine, Nick, Colm, to join us and giving us such a fantastic insights into food waste reduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you all, and thank you for joining.
Thanks.
All the best.